Hi, welcome to the WAN Manager podcast. Today we have Remarc Bognár, Head of Network Architecture at Norsk Hydro. And so rather than a single topic or issue in the WAN like we often do, today we're going to talk more broadly about the Norsk Hydro network itself. So how it's set up, the process that Remarc took to get it where it is, and then hopefully a little something about where they are headed with their network going forward. So welcome, Remarc. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hello. Hello, Greg. Thanks for inviting. It's a good
Yeah,
opportunity to discuss.
absolutely. And it's excellent to talk to you again. I've already heard a lot of this stuff, but first I wondered if perhaps you could tell us a bit about Norsk Hydro itself, and then, of course, your role there as head of network architecture.
Sure thing. So, Norsk Hydro, it's one of the largest aluminum companies in the world. We have around 200 locations, and they are mainly in Europe, North America, and a large portion in Brazil, and
Mm,
a few parts in APAC, but that is not too significant. We are not present
hmm
in Africa or any other place. My role in the company, I'm basically leading the network architecture team. So that means that we are responsible for the network as a whole. So not just the wide area network, but also local area network and proxies and anything that has some kind of relation to network. And our
hmm
role is about defining the strategy and doing implementation of new things. That's basically it.
Excellent, and that is exactly why I wanted to have you on the show here today. Is that this is what we're always trying to sort of work around. There's a lot of sources out there for very technical deep dives, but what we want to look at is the sort of big market kind of strategy. So excellent. So I thought a good place to start with that would be to just get kind of a quick rundown. Obviously, you don't have to give super detailed information here, but a rundown of what your network looks like right now, how many sites. You gave us a quick geographic overview already, but maybe a little bit about the mix of sites being in the sort of industrial end of the economic spectrum. Do you have a lot of sort of far-flung remote sites? Could you just kind of take us through what the sites look like and how you have to connect them?
Yeah, so basically we have in every region we have some sort of headquarter, which is mostly
Mm,
a large office kind of
hmm
facility. We also have some shared services locations where it is also office, but the main majority of the sites are actually more than 100 sites are production sites, which
mm.
are that's where the magic happens, where the business
Right.
happens,
Turning
right?
turning bauxite into aluminum or whatever it
Yeah,
is.
that's
Right. So
that's
yeah,
basically
yeah.
it because it's a
Uh,
full chain company. So we do
mhm,
everything from mining to creating raw aluminium and also the energy. We do that with renewable energy that in Norway
right.
because we have a lot of
Right.
plants
Right.
there, energy plants, and then use that energy to create raw aluminium and then from there end products. So basically, yeah, it is important that these sites are up and running, and that those are the most critical sites in this discussion. But of course, we have other small sites like sales offices
Mhm.
or like warehouses and stuff like that.
And so what's your service mix look like right now? A mix of MPLS, DIA? Do you have any sort of more broadband, business broadband, consumer kind of broadband? What are you running across all those sites?
So we did go on to the SD-WAN journey, and
Mm-hmm.
we installed SD-WAN to all sites. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and but the underlying network, so the physical connections, we tried to standardize on this. That we have sort of a main line that is main physical line that is virtually separated into MPLS and to premium internet. And on the major sites, we do have like a business grade internet on the backup link, but for not so important sites, we usually have a broadband internet as a backup link. Yeah.
Gotcha. And just out of curiosity, do you find it difficult to source broadband, especially for some of those remote industrial sites?
No, it's okay. We actually gonna go deep into this discussion then, because
Yeah, yeah,
what
absolutely. Yeah,
what
yeah.
I see here is that MPLS is less needed.
Hmm.
We when we did this journey, when we started, it was 2017,
Right.
18. So at that point, we didn't say, okay, we're gonna seize MPLS as it is. We're just going to, adapt it that later on we can just shut it down easily virtually and then keep the internet. So
Yeah.
that's
We
one
hear that a
part of it.
lot, definitely. I mean, even after SD-WAN adoption, obviously a big point of it is to free yourself from expensive MPLS, but that when it was, especially a few years ago, a less tested concept, it was kind of scary to get rid of
Yeah.
MPLS.
And
So you kept it, but you think you might be getting rid of it in the future?
yeah, that's definitely going to happen, I believe. But the premium internet that these large tier one providers are selling, that's
Hmm.
rebanded MPLS because it uses
Right.
almost the same network. You get the same kind of quality, but the price is also really similar to MPLS. So the only thing you get in advanced compared to MPLS is that you go directly to the cloud where you need to, or you can build
Right.
these tunnels to other sites that do not have this, you know, let's say premium
Hmm.
private internet net.
How about backups, though? Just to interrupt real quick, one thing we talk about a lot in our different pricing configurations and whatnot at TeleGeography is that if you go with, say, a private internet solution (DIA) with SD-WAN as an overlay, you can have two active ports or whatever that are right sized for that particular site's needs, and not have to have a fully redundant MPLS kind of backup like you would have with an all MPLS network. Were you in that kind of situation previous to adopting SD-WAN, where you were backing up your MPLS and could get rid of that?
Okay, so if I could go back on time, I would do
Mhm.
things differently. So what I
I
have right
mean,
now,
that's a
that is
profound statement for everything, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
right now this setup it's okay, but it's not that much cost effective,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
we could actually do better. So going back to your
Sure.
question, that was like think 3 sentences before at
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
how do we provision internet lines. So what we did is we just said, okay, our big provider give me broadband, and what they usually do is they have this subcontractor. There's a few of
Hmm.
them in the world who sort of do global broadband
Absolutely.
reselling, but that
Yep.
is not too effective, and maybe some of these guys who work in the sales organization is going to kill me, but whatever. I'm just
Yeah,
saying
well,
that
I mean, I think they admit they have a markup on what they source. It's for the
no,
convenience of it, right? So yeah, yeah.
the markup is fine. I mean, because if they could, I can source this from one single source, then the markup, I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem
Hmm.
is that they are not too effective finding the best circuits in the
Right.
area, because there are so many providers in the world, and especially if you look in Europe, where it's not one country like in the US on a big region.
Hmm. Hmm.
If you go into
Right.
Europe, every country has its tier two, tier three providers, and there's a lot of them. So I'm talking about thousands. So they are only
Hmm.
working with a few of them in each country, and those do not may not be present at the locations where we are. So we sort of changed our strategy, and we said we're not going
Hmm.
to buy this from a central provider. These backup circuits, we're just going to go check the local market. What do we have there? Is there a business grade internet on fiber that we can deliver? Even if it's a lower tier provider, it's probably going to be the same or even better performance than a centrally sourced broadband connection. So
Hmm.
that's what we did at a certain point. So I think at the
Hmm.
half of the project, we just said, okay, we're gonna buy this for our own.
I was doing one of these interviews that we do for our WAN manager survey, and the I got a great quote from someone about this very topic, where he said, the problem with the global providers is that they're globally bad everywhere. Right? So, I didn't say it; it's not my words, but it was definitely entertaining. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So that does sound like a lot of work on your part, though. Do you have a team that's sort of dedicated to spending a fair bit of time just looking at broadband circuits, and if maybe you could, along with that, tell me how do you determine sort of which broadband providers are performing well for you?
Okay, so we have an advantage here compared to maybe other companies because most of our sites have local IT coverage, which means that there
Hmm.
are, people who understand what internet is in
Yes.
real
Yeah.
life and,
Hmm.
what comes with it. So in this case, what we usually do is not, we don't try to buy it ourselves centrally from the network team, but we sort of work together with the local IT people and they go
Right.
out, they have market knowledge and they go out to those providers that they know that they are in the area and
Hmm.
yeah, and then source it from there. And what we did is that just to overcome this management problem that you need to have a lot of people looking after these circuits, what we did is that we agreed with our global provider that with the letter of authority we will give them the rights to open tickets in our behalf. So that was
Ah,
the sort
interesting.
of
Yeah.
solution that we sort of went with, and then that comes with a markup. But then at least I know that I don't get a shitty circuit; I get a good circuit
Yeah,
with a
that's
fair amount
right.
of
Yeah,
price,
absolutely.
and then I
Yeah.
pay a little bit, a couple of $10 or $20 per circuit, and then I get the management on top of
It's the WAN world isn't free from the principle that's true just about everywhere, which is you get what you pay for to some extent.
it.
I want to get to SD-WAN, but before we get there, last time we spoke, you talked about some of your difficulties with M&A activity. I guess you were acquired perhaps by another company, that was in your previous role. You can remind me of the situation, but I just wanted you to talk a little bit about that because it comes up so often that the role of a WAN manager, a network architect, looking at these strategies isn't just about the technical configurations and products used and vendors used, but about sort of the politics of merging different IT organizations with different philosophies, perhaps. And I wonder if you could talk about how the merger that you went through impacted your role.
Yeah, so you were right when you were saying politics, because you
Yes,
need to
yes,
be a
indeed.
politician as a network architect or a network manager. That's absolutely true. Because especially during these mergers and acquisitions. To be honest, what happened with Hydro, that Hydro was a bigger company than Sapa, which is the extrusion business part
Hmm.
now in the organization.
Hmm.
However, network-wise, it was Sapa was double the size as Hydro. So
Ah, gotcha.
so in this way, and also with IT in general, so infrastructure in general. So
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
this case, it was obvious that we need to sort of merge, and then but it wasn't like okay, whatever you say, we're gonna implement it to two times the size that you have. So it started a big discussion that who is going to change and what makes sense to change. Um, However, for the network part, we were in the fortunate situation that both companies were about to do a network tender. So what
Mm,
happened is that we got that frozen, sort of, and then we said we
right.
need to work together and then put down something totally new. And that's when
That's
the whole SD1, I mean, SD1 was the goal for both of us. And
mhm,
then
mhm.
when we said, okay, we need to come with a common goal, and then of course when there is politics involved, and then there is these mergers happen, then the most, I mean the company that profits the most out of this situation from network
Right.
perspective is the wider network providers because and yeah, they probably take sides, one of the sides, because one company has its own preferred provider, the other
Right.
one is their own
Right.
one, and then one of those gain all of it. So this is what
Yeah.
happened, and then there, it was I think it was an intense 4 week discussion, or maybe 6 weeks.
Mm.
I don't even remember. But I was actually not living at home. We were
You've
sitting
tried to put it out
in
of
a
your
room.
mind. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
right. Yeah.
yeah. We were sitting in a room with a group of people from both
Wow.
organizations, and then
Hmm.
doing a lot of comparisons and whatever. But yeah, if it would have been better if we wouldn't analyze that much, but do some gut feelings better than analyzing, because yeah, it turned out that we didn't go for the best solution at the end because
Mm-hmm.
we
Hmm.
overanalyzed things. So yeah, politics, yeah,
Yeah.
it can ruin a lot of things. So if
Yeah.
I have a general advice there, try to find the best for the company, but when you do that, it might cost a lot on your professional life. So
Mm. Hmm.
yeah, I don't know how to go deep into this because I don't obviously want to share too much details, but
Yeah. Of course. Of course. Yeah.
at the end,
Still.
I come on
Uh-huh.
top of it, so
Yeah. Yeah.
that's good. But yeah, it did take a lot of work and a lot of
Yeah.
fights.
And just to hear the amount of effort you put in there, and you were in what I think a lot of people might call a pretty good position, given those circumstances, in that you didn't have a situation where one of you had already rolled out SD-WAN, and then you didn't like that, so it's probably better to be in that position when you're at the end of your contracts and starting to look at something new, at least, rather than integrate somebody who's locked into maybe a multi-year contract already on their part of the network, and you have to make them work together, right? So.
Yeah, and going back there, because these situations, they mean that you need to sort of approve the situation on both sides.
Hmm.
That is kind of counterproductive in my mind when you're doing
Right.
strategies,
Hmm.
because there are a lot of things that can change the whole concept,
Right.
and sometimes in this situation the rational mind doesn't play a role. It's more like emotions and whatever. So my suggestion is that try to be rational when you get into
Mm.
this situation, and try to close out the emotions. I think that's the key takeaway for me back from
Yeah.
2017.
And I mean, that's good advice in so many ways, that if you can sort of take our monkey brains out of it, and, and use the prefrontal cortex, as it were, right? So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so with that kind of setup, I think that's useful background, especially also that this was 2017. So in our data, it's still, even among the enterprises that we talk to, which are probably a little more forward thinking and early adopter than the broader market, it's still only about half that have already adopted SD-WAN. So 2017, you were very early here. So with that in mind, I wonder if you could take us through the vendor selection process. Not asking you to name names, but feel free to if you want to. That's totally up to you. But how did you go about selecting a vendor for SD-WAN several years ago?
The question is that should we discuss what happened in 2017, or should we discuss what I would do right now?
Oh,
Because that is two
that's a
different
great way to put
views.
it. Yeah. Well, and maybe let's start with what you did, and then how you would do it differently now, if that makes sense.
At that time, it was sort of obvious that we would go with the provider for managing the SD-WAN, and then we would
Hmm.
source our internet lines or MPLS from one global provider,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
uh, and then go that way. And of course, what we did is that we brought in the big names that we have in Europe and in America. So
Sure. Sure.
these big ones, then made a short selection based on their offering. In 2017, it was really fairly new that some
Hmm.
providers weren't even offering SD-WAN, or they were
Right. Of
said that their
course.
product
Yeah.
was not ready. So
Hmm.
it became a short list quite fast, and
Right.
um, and we ended up with actually yeah, I can say the name because it was not the winner, and now that company doesn't exist anymore. We sort of
Sure.
use
Absolutely. Yeah.
Interroute, which
Oh
which
yeah.
was that company was acquired by, I think, GTT, and now
Right.
GTT is selling that off. But
Yes.
but
Yes.
at that time, it was the company was yeah, it had a different owner. It was a individual company, and then
Hmm.
they were doing the business to business. So that was their main portfolio, doing business to business.
Right.
They were the backbone for Europe,
Yeah, I was gonna say,
basically.
did they have they didn't have an did they have an integrated SD-WAN solution back then? They were more of a
Yep,
pure
they did.
play kind of carrier. Okay, interesting. Yeah.
So that was their strategical thing, and then I believe the whole thing was flushed down the toilet when they got acquired
Hmm.
by the other company.
Hmm.
But they were
Hmm.
actually quite an innovative company at that time, a small, mid-size and
Right.
company, and what they were doing is 90% of their revenue was coming out of selling backbone lines to other providers. That's what they did in
Right.
Europe.
Yeah,
But then they
exactly.
said
I
that
thought of
they,
them as a wholesale player,
yeah,
definitely. So
yeah.
that's interesting. Yeah.
And
Hmm.
then they changed the market strategy and they said, okay, we already got all the providers buying backbone services from us, so where
Right.
can we increase revenue? And they said, okay, we're going to go out to the consumer market. And they had an SD-WAN offering on NFV, and it was a Silver Peak one,
Hmm.
which
Hmm.
was really interesting at that time because at that time, Cisco, Silver Peak, they were the leaders in the
Hmm.
in the in the market. But yeah, long story short, we used this provider because they were, aggressive in this one. We used them against our other bet to sort of bring down
Hmm.
prices, and actually worked. So I would have stick with this company, but at the end we didn't go with this one. But at least we saved a lot of money compared to what we were spending before
Right.
2017. So it was
Right.
with changing this whole model and changing to the whole thing. I don't remember exactly the figures anymore, but it was in the millions of euros
Hmm.
that we got into savings year by year. Yeah, and that was at that time maybe a good strategy, but nowadays I would totally do differently the whole
Yeah,
thing.
so
So
let's talk about that. What if you were starting and like I said, a lot of folks listening to this podcast are sitting there in the process of maybe I've got mostly MPLS network right now. I'm looking at SD-WAN vendors. What would you say to them?
okay, so what I would do is that I would first of all look at a bigger picture because SD1,
Hmm.
that is just one part of the bigger picture. So if you are responsible of the network as a whole, then you should probably start to put down a strategy. What is your overall network strategy? Because there is a lot of new
Mm,
products
right.
and
Uh-huh.
interrupting things that is coming out in the market that you should consider to
Hmm.
integrate future into your global picture. So what I'm
Like
talking
security
about right
now and
here,
stuff,
yeah,
right? Hmm.
like
Hmm. Sorry.
SASE, this SASE thing that is on the horizon, your
Right.
zero trust networking, your, the software-defined networking in the local area network. How can you integrate that in with SD-WAN? So all these things now sort of seem to be come together because back, I
Hmm.
don't know, in the last 10 or 20 years, every segment was a little island of its own, I would say, because
Right.
okay, you had the
Exactly.
wide area network, you had your security gateway somewhere in Frankfurt or New York or I don't know
Hmm.
where in US, Pittsburgh maybe, I'm not
Ashburn.
sure which,
Yeah.
Ashburn, yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay, so those locations, and then it started to merge a little bit, I guess. So when you said, okay, as the one, I don't want to buy the old classical um, secure gateways that I brought 10 years ago. I want to have these local breakouts. I need a cloud proxy. Then you go towards these vendors that are offering that. And then
Hmm.
you already have a combination, right? But now when you look a little bit more in the bigger picture, then you can say, okay, I can combine even better my security product with wider network, and I can also combine that with my VPN solution, bringing it into the SASE cloud, right? That's in the
Right.
right in the middle. Well, you can also, as I already mentioned, then how are you going to have these segmentations that you are going to put into your network, how is it going to be distributed between your sites? So you sort of want to extend your zero trust network, not just onto one site, but you want to extend it to other sites and to have some kind of global policy, and not to overcomplicate things. Because if you do policy side by side, or and also the WAN policy side by side, then your whole network is going to be extremely complex, and then
Right.
whatever you gain on
Hmm.
security, you're gonna lose it on
Right.
complexity and then
Right.
operational things. So I would definitely zoom out a little bit, try to put
Hmm.
down my overall strategy, and then also look at what is the SD-WAN provider that is actually fitting into this kind of structure. Because
Right.
some of the SD-WAN providers come from the accelerator world, the WAN accelerator world. Some of them come
Hmm.
from classical, providers, like, classical hardware
Right.
manufacturers
The
like the
Cisco's, Junipers.
Cisco
Yeah.
and Juniper and these ones. And
Hmm.
some of them are even coming from the server world.
Yeah.
So VMware is trying to put
Right.
they acquired VeloCloud, and
Right.
they sort of mixing the things together. And then some of them are coming from the firewall world, like the acquisitions of
Fortinet.
Palo
Yeah.
Alto, and yeah. So
Yeah.
so
Hmm.
so there is a lot of vendors out there, and all of them have some kind of pros and cons. So if you are, what I'm saying is that if you are focused on buying cheap internet lines, right, then you should
Hmm.
be looking for an SD-WAN solution that will sort of help you to combine all those cheap internet and into a quality
Right.
that is actually going to
Hmm.
work for you. Because
Right. Right.
some of these SD-WAN providers, they do not focus on performance enhancement,
Hmm.
rather than routing and segmentation and stuff. So
Right.
if you are on the budget part, where you say, okay, for me, I want cheap internet circuits and budget, and I'm on a low on budget, then I would definitely go with the vendor that came from the acceleration of the WAN accelerator world.
Right.
Because what they invested most on it is that how can you bring these internet circuits into one single connection that is actually comparable to MPLS. But if
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
are more advanced on segmentation, or routing, so you have, I don't know, a lot of different companies within your company, or
Right.
business areas, and then you need to have all kinds of segments for all of those. You have 60 different subsidiaries, and you sort of need to bring all the routing together, and do segmentation. And
Hmm.
probably you are better off with a with somebody who comes from the firewall world, or just a classical networking for like Cisco. So
Right. Right.
that would drive the decision on SD-WAN vendor selection. But then that would also bring you towards to the idea, okay, who is going to manage this for me?
Exactly. Yeah.
Because providers, they stick to with one of the SD-WAN providers more likely. So
Hmm.
they because it's costly to build a network operation or NOC, network operation center, that
Right.
can operate 10 kinds of SD-WAN. So what they do,
Right.
okay, I'm gonna just stick with one of them, make them strategical partner. I get a lot of discounts. I can sell it to customers, and
Yeah.
whoever
Yeah.
customers wants to buy that, they will just buy it from me because I'm offering that. So that's how it is. And then you need to make the decision, like, are you going to buy this from the same vendor that is going to sell you the internet links, or are you going to separate the thing and then say that
Hmm.
I will have an
Hmm.
SD-WAN managing vendor, um, which could be actually in-house as well. If you are well stuffed, you can do
Hmm.
that. But
Hmm.
you're going to have a separate SD-WAN vendor, SD-WAN managing vendor, and then you
Right.
have a different vendor for provisioning internets. I think that's the best model. I
Hmm.
would,
Hmm.
if I would do network changes right now, or if I will be doing network changes in the future, I will definitely go in that route, that I separate the SD-WAN management from internet provisioning.
From the carrier. Right.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
because
Yeah.
it is if you do it all together, it's really rigid. It's not flexible.
Mm.
And then
Hmm.
if you are not
Hmm.
happy, which you probably won't be happy,
Right.
then
Yeah.
it is really hard to change. So yeah,
Yeah.
and that's one
That's
point.
uh-huh.
Then if I jump into, sorry, I'm gonna have a long monologue here. And if
No,
I
that's
jump,
great. That's great. It's great information. So yeah.
if I change my perspective on how would I provision internet lines, I would definitely not buy any MPLS anymore. I don't see
Hmm.
the point of it. In some rare occasions, maybe. So if you are in a really rural area where there
Hmm.
is no internet built out and you have some MPLS built for millions of euros or dollars in before,
Right. Right.
um,
Yeah.
probably you're not
Hmm.
going to change that because that it
Right.
doesn't make sense. Or
Hmm.
you say that you don't trust internet for your most critical sites where, I don't know, 5,000 people are working every day, and then
Right.
if production stops there, millions of euros or dollars. I'm not sure who is listening to this. Is it more like you
Yeah.
Americans
Both
or
both works. Yeah. I
okay?
do all my pricing analysis in dollars, so people who
Okay.
pay attention to the stuff that we put out, we run that exact kind of scenario where you have MPLS at the core kind of headquarters sites, and save millions of dollars on ditching it elsewhere. So sorry,
Yeah.
please go ahead. Yeah.
So I definitely say that if you are conservative and you are afraid of things, then keep your MPLS on the most important sites, but
Hmm.
don't go MPLS for non-critical sites. That's for sure. Don't keep
Right.
it. Don't
Right.
don't provision it in your new solution because it doesn't make sense.
Hmm.
And then internet. Where to buy internet? I think we already touched
That is the
this.
big question.
Yeah,
Yeah, but yeah,
that's
absolutely. Hmm.
we already touched it, but I want to sort of show some pros and cons what we have here.
Hmm.
Um, for example, if you buy it from a tier one provider who's going to deploy you the rebranded MPLS internet, because that's
Right.
what it
It's
is in my
essentially
head.
MPLS like service. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Hmm.
because it's the same backbone it is using. It's the same provider edge routers where you join in.
Right.
It's the same process as with MPLS. So what it means is going to be really long lead times to install
Hmm.
because they need
Hmm.
to do all those things that they do with MPLS. So they need to build that last mile between their
Right.
POP and your site. So it's going to be painfully long, not fast provision, what SD1 is
Right.
meant to be, right? Then the other thing is that they are going to use private IPs on the internet,
Right.
or in
Hmm.
cases they will say that okay, this internet is it is a private network in a way, only
Yeah.
that there is a
Yeah.
public part at the other end. But
Right, but they're
what
not trading your traffic off to other ISPs or internet providers. So yeah, a lot of times, almost as soon as your traffic leaves your site, it's getting handed off to some other provider. That's not the case with tier one, and that's their kind of argument for why it's worth paying more for, perhaps. Right. So
Yeah,
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 yeah.
that's absolutely true.
Mhm.
But it also means that you're stick with them because,
Right.
for
Right.
example, if you want to change ISP, and it's or you want to change vendors, then it's going to be long and
The
painful to change them.
contract and
Yeah,
and the provisioning time. Right. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, 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 yeah. Because let's say that you want to change the SD1. You are in a contract where you buy SD1 management and internet service from the tier one provider. Let's say you want to change technology because you are not happy with your SD1 world. What
Hmm.
happens is that you're probably not going to be able to change it with the provider that you're buying the internet from. So
Right.
what it means that you need to change the whole thing. So
Right. Right.
in this case, it's not just that you say I'm gonna cancel my SD1 subscription and then put my own one on the end of it, because it's their own network in this way. Even if it's internet, uh, it will cause a lot of problems, and they will have provisioner issues. All their automations that was built around this product is going to screw up, and then all these
Hmm.
administrative issues and all those fast codings that they need to done in order to jump into the
All for
SD-WAN
nothing.
market,
Yeah.
yeah, all for nothing. And
Yeah.
that's a lot of pain that you could save
Yeah.
yourself if you are doing this as a clean sheet, as a green field.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
yeah, I don't suggest to buy from tier one providers. Um, that's my advice. There will be
Hmm.
a lot of people who will say against me, and
Sure.
I understand that point as well. But
Hmm.
I bought from tier one providers, and I'm not happy with that service.
Yeah.
And
No, I mean exactly the kind of thing that we want to explore on this podcast, truthfully, is because every network is different, everyone's compute needs are different, everyone's site setup is different. And it's cliche, but the right solution is very likely slightly different for everyone. So getting a perspective on like what you've been through and what you would do next is exactly what people want to hear about. So
yeah, yeah. So if you want to buy this internet circuit, then don't buy it together with the SD-WAN. That's my other advice because yeah,
Interesting. Right. So
yeah,
go directly to an SD-WAN vendor, maybe maybe even managed yourself, so that you have an underlay. The underlays issues are whatever they are, and it's not tied to your overlay issues.
yeah,
If that makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah. That's basically what I want to say. Good
Yeah.
putting it together in one word. So,
Oh,
but
no
that,
worries. And that's what is really great, I think, about SD-WAN is it provides that opportunity, right? You know what I mean? It was really hard 5 years ago if you even if you wanted to pursue a kind of like mini MPLS WANs around different regions or something, that was very difficult. Whereas, SD-WAN does give you the opportunity to act kind of more as your own telco and kind of put a network together yourself. So it sounds like you're leaning toward that direction.
yeah, absolutely, and I think this is the biggest advantage because if you're unhappy with something, you can change it immediately, at least on the
Right.
overlay part.
Mhm.
Um, what I think is worth putting time into is then because we I haven't closed that monologue yet. So what is my
Mhm.
recommended internet buy? And but we already touched that I think at the beginning of the discussion. That
Mhm.
right now, what I would do, I would source internets locally, and then
Mhm.
I would
Mhm.
either build an inside team who would be managing this, or find a global provider that is with this little letter of authority who take over the hassle of doing these line
Right.
failure, reporting and whatever is around it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Once you have your underlay built in a strategic way, so it means that you brought in the fiber into the site, and that is with a good provider, or you bought multiple fibers into your location that is on a good kind of connection, stable and good peering with other ISPs, then
Mhm.
you're good for for a long time. Because in the past, if you wanted to do a wide area network change, it means that you sort of destructed all the things that you have built up in the last 10 years, and then you start
Right.
over with another vendor who will charge you with non-recurring costs building the
Right.
network, whatever. But with this
And
new
there's just a
world,
cost to sending out an RFI and RFP and all that sort of thing,
of
even
course, and the technician
beyond that.
needs to
Yeah.
go out. So it's per site it can go easily on the
Mhm.
thousands of dollars. But what if they say that the fiber that the previous provider used that is not good for us because they are not in contract with that sub provider, they need to build a new one, and they will say, okay, there is a digging cost of $100,000, you need to pay that. And that's how you sort of did that in the past. But now,
Mhm.
if you invest into your underlay network, which is pure internet, and it is based on providers that are strong in your region, then you build that network for once, and then your network tender in the future will only be changing as the one vendors and not the underlay network,
Right.
right?
Right.
Because
Mhm.
and that is the strong and fundamental thing that I believe SD was meant for, and that is the flexibility that should come with SD1 in total. So a lot of the companies got this wrong at the first, like us.
Absolutely.
Like
Hmm.
we said, okay, SD1, let's bring it in with a tier one provider, and then it will be great for us. But in the end, you pay millions of euros, you get a shitty service, and it's
Hmm.
rigid and it's not flexible and it's slow to deploy and all those problems that you had in past with MPLS.
Exactly. All
Um,
the same MPLS problems.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So yeah, this is my advice basically, that make sure your underlay is pure internet, not with one company, but it's a
Hmm.
pure internet with local internet suppliers. Build that underlay, invest into fiber, into building. Okay, you find out that there is a good provider, a tier one provider in the country, in Italy, for example, who will dig that fiber for your location. So if you pay that digging cost directly to the one that is owning that network, then you will know that that digging cost didn't went into the toilet, because you will never need to pay that digging cost again for another provider, because that will
Right.
be yours. That investment you did is not going to
Yeah.
go away when you do the next wide area network tender, which is only about devices.
Yeah, we need to look at the WAN as like an enterprise or corporation would think about physical infrastructure, even, right? You know, so if you
Yeah,
constructed a site, you wouldn't just abandon it every few years, right? So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it's like with the utilities, and I think
Hmm.
underlay is a new kind of utility in this
Hmm.
perspective, and the intelligence and the, let's say, the quality and all these modern stuff that all comes from the overlay, and then that you can change quite easily, because once you have all those IP addresses already in your data, right? Because you're not going to change the IP address. All you need to do, the zero trust provisioning in that matter
Right.
would be much more easier, because then you
Yeah.
configure those devices with the IPs that you already have and you already know in your next change, and then you send it out to the sites, and then okay, you don't even need to have the local IT knowledge to plug those things in, because then with a simple guide anybody can plug it in,
Right.
and then you achieve zero touch networking, which is right now that's not happening anywhere. And I even
Yeah.
heard that
Hmm.
these tier one providers, they are not putting into their marketing thing anymore, because
They know it didn't
there's no
happen.
such
Yeah.
thing as zero
Yeah.
touch in their world. So
Hmm.
so there is a lot of benefits around this way of provisioning.
Hmm. Excellent. You know, I think a great way to sort of wrap this up and put the capstone on it is to say all of these things you've been saying. It sounds like they're what you want to do going forward. Are you in a position now where you're kind of waiting out the clock, if you will, on your contracts and to be able to implement this kind of new strategy? Is that where you are right now?
No, this is a future things.
Hmm.
I having all this in mind, and we are waiting for the SOSM model to evolve, because
Gotcha. Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know to bring the best performance, you want 90% of our traffic is internet. I
Right.
mean web traffic, not internet. I mean internet, and
Right.
basically for that, with SD1 and a cloud proxy solution, you don't have these performance enhancing systems that you would have for your internal network. So this intelligence that in the SD1, it requires an SD1 box on one side and an SD box on the other side in order
Hmm.
to enhance your performance over the internet links. So what is missing on the market right now, or some startups are already doing it, but
Hmm.
is that you bring the SD1 function closer to your security side. So right now, the full
Yep.
SASE model, there's nobody really offering that
Yep.
in a good way. But I'm waiting
Right.
to that to be consolidated, and and then we can utilize that into the new section. So I think I'm not going to do
Hmm.
any changes in the next 2 years
Wait for it
until
to
until
mature. Right.
yeah, wait for it to mature, and then I will get all these ideas that I've just discussed here,
Yeah.
put it into one strategy and then implement it that way.
That's really interesting. I mean, certainly from, we track kind of profiles of the SD-WAN vendors, and of course, in the past year or less, really, SASE has become a part of all of their marketing language. But when you dig into sort of what actual functions they're offering, it is true. It's there's some room to develop into. SASE is a concept, but we need that concept to develop into actual offerings that you can put together in a way that works for you. So it's going to be interesting to watch from our perspective.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, this was really interesting. I think that everybody, whether you're on the buy side or the sell side, is going to find this to be really useful to think about looking forward. So thank you so much for joining us, Remarc. I always like to end things though with kind of a fun note. And for that, I'm wondering if maybe you can tell me what you're most looking forward to once life has returned to a post COVID kind of baseline. What is it that you've been missing the last year or so?
I want to go onto a hotel and have a
Yeah,
beer at the bar
yeah. Oh man,
with
I
my
feel that
wife
one. Yeah,
or with my
absolutely.
colleagues, with somebody, you know.
Yeah.
But that's it. But yeah, that's the most I miss, the traveling part.
hmm Yeah, that's right. You and I are speaking at the same virtual conference at the end of this month, the SD-WAN World SD-WAN Summit, I think, or whatever. So, and
Yep.
that was supposed to be in Berlin. That would have been great. Get some a beer and a falafel on the street corner. But alas, I will be right here. So, yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you so much. This has been really great, and I should make a note to check in a couple years and see how things are. I'm sure we'll be checking in before then, but it would be great to someday get an update on kind of how all of that went for you, and if what you were hoping would emerge did. So excellent.
Yep. Looking forward for that. Thanks for the invite for this one. Discussions.
Absolutely. Thanks very much for listening. The WAN Manager podcast is brought to you by TeleGeography, a division of Primetrica Incorporated, and is edited and produced by Jane Miller. I wrote the theme song you're listening to right now, and we get administrative canine support from my dog Honeybun, who you might hear chiming in from time to time when the mood strikes her. If you want to learn more about our data, head over to telegeography.com, where you can find our blog that covers many of the topics we hit here, and you can sign up for our WAN Manager newsletter. Until next time, have a great day. So we talk a lot on the WAN Manager podcast about the edge like SD-WAN and the core like cloud, but there's also the internet middle mile between those two things. At TeleGeography, we've actually been doing a lot of research on what happens between the core backbone network and the local access, and we're excited to share our findings. That's why on March 4th at 10 a.m. Eastern, we're getting together for a TeleGeography deep dive online. So this will be a live event with lots of data and discussion. We'll present some of our research findings and talk with experts from places like Epsilon, Ariaka, AM6, and Megaport. It's going to be a really interesting morning or afternoon, depending on your time zone. And with TeleGeography Deep Dives, we want you to get deeper into these topics than the normal 30-minute webinar would allow us to do. We also know there's a lot of bigger, longer, multi-day online events happening out there right now. And neither of those options felt quite right for what we were going for in this topic. So we thought this presentation and panel format, just lasting about an hour, is really the sweet spot. We hope you think so too. So you can register for this event through the link in our show notes here, or you can head over to blog.telegeography.com for more information. Now, if you can't make the event, sign up anyway, and we'll make sure you get access to a recording. We also left space on the registration form, so you can ask us your middle mile questions ahead of time, and then we can cover exactly what you are interested in. All said, we can't wait for this session on all things middle mile, and again, hope to see you there on March 4th at 10 a.m. Eastern.